Our edition of the Patriots Beat Podcast, presented by the CLNS Media Network. Pat's Pulpit's Brian Hines here, joined as always by Alex Barth from 98.5 The Sports Hub. And the Patriots got a little bit of an early start to their summer vacation here. As they have done in the past, they canceled the final day of mandatory minicamp yesterday. They opted for a team building day at a local paintball. They went paintballing yesterday. But it was a productive 2 days of minicamp, productive OTAs, so nothing out of the ordinary there for Bill to kind of call it off early and let them be till training camp.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting what Devin McCourty told Tom Curran about it, because I saw some people freaking out. Oh, they already lost OTAs and they're behind and blah, blah, blah. But, people say, oh, I don't see the good teams doing this. And then somebody told me the Bills did. So I still don't see the good teams doing it, to be fair. But Devin McCourty said if they were out on the field on Wednesday, that means they're behind schedule. They almost always cancel this practice to turn it into a team building thing. If they were out there, it means Bill felt they need more time, which wouldn't be great. So, no, I would have been more concerned if they were out there yesterday. I think they got in everything they needed to get in. There's only, as I've made blatantly clear, there's only so much you can do at these spring practices. So I'm not too worried about them taking the extra day.
Definitely. And Tuesday kind of did have that finale feel to it.
Yeah.
We saw, I think Mike Reese said, like, Bailey Zappi got in with the ones, kind of like contingency, you're running through those type of things. So that seemed where it was headed, and that's where it was. So while we don't have a practice or mini camp to break down, we're going to kind of we were at 5 open practices this spring, 3 OTAs, 2 mini camps. So we're going to kind of go position by position here, what we saw, what we're kind of looking forward to as we look forward to training camp in about a month. And we'll start with the most important thing, the quarterback. To me, it was Mac Jones. There's no quarterback competition, which we've discussed. It was Mac Jones with the ones, getting the important reps. But the big thing for me there was, his body language. He looked refreshed. He looked like he was having fun again. And he was in command at the line of scrimmage, which is something we didn't see a lot last year. And he even said, like, we're just running plays into bad looks because we need as many reps as possible when we are changing this offense. But that was different this year. He's barking out signals at the line of scrimmage, flashing hand signals, changing things up. So he called it his toolbox, right? He has all the tools in his toolbox. So to me, that was, from these non-padded practices, that was probably the biggest thing I took away from the quarterback position.
Yeah, and really my biggest quarterback takeaway, outside of the fact there is no quarterback competition as we expected, is Bill O'Brien. Just a change Bill O'Brien made. And I know he's not a quarterback, but it affects the quarterback so much because, like you said, they can look so much more comfortable. It's a much more quarterback-friendly offense. It's an offense that looks much more tailored to Mac Jones' skill set specifically. He's going to make a difference. To what extent, we'll see. We'll get into some of the other things that could hinder them offensively this year, because there still are some concerns, I think, including one major concern. But if their offense is done in this year, it's not going to be by the quarterback position. They have enough, the coach, the quarterback, the system, all of that. That should not be an issue.
And we'll see how he looks, Jones, from a playmaking point when the pads come on, live pockets, preseason, all that stuff. But from these practices, that's a good starting point, it seems like, at this point.
Yeah, certainly. Like the disclaimer on all of this, right, is we still have such a long way to go to really see what any of this is, but it does look different. And just the way last year was different at this point is good.
Yeah. Not to freak out about some padded practices, but the difference is it's a good start for sure.
Yeah. I mean, just like some of the concepts we're seeing, right? They're using more. So I did this with Matt Dolph on the Sports Hub Patriots podcast. Yes, that was yesterday. Long day yesterday. Yesterday, people check that out on 98.5thesportshub.com. When we talk about, like, the big thing, I think a lot of people pointed out, and there's the varied personnel, there's the 12 personnel, there's the different sort of sets, but the big thing is motion. That's what a lot of people pointed out. When we say, because I've said this before, like, hey, they're using a lot more motion than they did last year. People say, oh, they motioned a lot last year. motion as a term is one of those things like, it's like, hey, can you hand me a Kleenex? Well, actually, it's a facial tissue. Kleenex is just a brand, right? Or like Sharpie or Whiteout or Band-Aid or any of these things, right? Motion's kind of like that in a way, where when we think of motion, right, you just think of a guy moving before the snap in general. But there's two kinds of that. There's a shift, which is a guy moving and then resetting. And sometimes that can be planned. That's not always, spur of the moment. It's not always an audible. Sometimes the plan is, hey, the running back, common one. Running back starts in the backfield, motions out, and sets as a receiver. That's a shift. Motion, like true motion, is when the guy's moving at the snap. Not like Canadian football arena style, but even like side to side, right? When that guy plays like jet sweeps, pop passes, you see it on screens, orbit motion, things like that. That's what we're seeing more of, is that true motion, which is really popular in the NFL. It's what you use to set up plays, to create shot plays, misdirected defense, things like that. That was a major thing they were lacking last year. So it's really good to see that back in the picture.
The setup plays. That's what I was going to say to that. And
Yeah.
we'll get a clear look at this whole Bill O'Brien offense. It seemed like they've kept most of it under wraps, as you would expect at this point of the year, but it seems like they're going to put some of this Alabama stuff in that Mac ran with Steve Sarkisian, that O'Brien learned at Alabama, which is kind of what we've been clamoring for here the last few years. RPOs, mentioned the motion, things like that. So we should get a clearer look at that when the pads come on, but that seems like they're headed in a good direction from that standpoint as well, too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And with that, the run game, tough to get a concept of the run game now with no pads, which we'll see again, but the running back position, we can jump there. They released James Robinson, so he's out of the picture. Ramondre's the lead guy, that's clear. I think the big questions now is who will be that spellback behind him and who will take the receiving role. And Montgomery has been serving as a receiver a lot lately, but they've been down a few receivers. So it'll be interesting if they get some receivers back, if he goes back to that running back role and becomes the pass catcher. Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris are in the mix, but it seems like those four are the guys. But how those roles kind of shape out here will be interesting.
And we saw Montgomery get some run with the wide receivers, so that adds a layer to it. I'm with you on that. I think it's going to be, if they want to play Montgomery at receiver, which they, I think, want to do, and they might have to do, and we'll get to that when we get to wide receivers, one of, if not both, Pierre Strong, Kevin Harris are going to have to step up. They both seemed pretty involved. The interesting thing is they're kind of different styles of running backs. So maybe there's some cases where it's one guy, some cases where it's the other. But I don't think either of them are buried. I don't think the team has moved on from either one. I don't think the fact that really neither of them played as rookies is a sign of anything more than the Patriots insist on redshirting rookie running backs. I think those guys are still very much in the picture. I think Ty Montgomery is going to have a pretty involved role in the offense just based off what we saw. But I don't think it's going to be purely as a running back. So that creates a need for another spot. And another running back could enter the conversation. Now, maybe that's as a practice squad guy who gets elevated. JJ Taylor was more involved than I thought he'd be in the spring. I still don't really see it with JJ Taylor, but, maybe they find a way to get him involved. Maybe they do end up bringing in another back to replace James Robinson. That wouldn't surprise me. Not Dalvin Cook. They're not going to, if they're going to spend that money, DeAndre Hopkins is going to be here. I don't think it's Dalvin Cook. Who's the other? Ezekiel Elliott. I don't think it's Ezekiel Elliott.
Fournette
apparently retired.
Oh.
I don't Fournette would actually make sense because I think you could get him for cheap, and there's a very, very clear role for him.
Before. They've liked him in the past. They've had interest in him in the past.
But I guess so. I saw Evan tweeted out like he liked Fournette, and then a bunch of people pointed out, I guess Fournette like a month ago put up an Instagram post that sort of seemed like a retirement post, and nobody was really sure. But if they're gonna go, since I know people are gonna ask about this, if they're gonna go with one of these has been big name free agent running backs, I want Zeke because I just want a guy that can. You need 2 yards, he's gonna get you 2 yards.
Yeah.
Period. I want that guy. But No, I'm talking, maybe UDFA or some guy that maybe they signed somebody out of the USFL or XFL. Like I could see room for another depth guy, practice squad, spot guy, the guy who we know this, they love to take a running back in the preseason and just give the guy 35 carries a game, right? Maybe it's Kevin Harris again this year, but maybe they have too big of a role in mind for him and they need somebody else to do it. They need somebody else to do it. So, but I do think those four, I had all four on my most recent roster projection, which is up now on 985thesportshub.com. I had all four on my most recent roster projection, and I do think all four are going to be involved to some extent.
Definitely. And Rex Burkhead, another guy, someone just said in the chat, been here before, kind of has that versatility. I know he's getting up there in age now, but if they want,
Is Rex Burkhead going to sign without knowing he's getting a roster spot? He might
that's true
be
too.
past that point in his career. I think you're looking at a younger guy who's looking to hang around and a guy that they change the practice squad rules every year. I got to go through and like really understand what they are this year, but you're only allowed like 3 or 4 like true veterans on the practice squad. I'm thinking a guy that has more umbrella practice squad eligibility because that guy's not making the roster. That's a guy you're keeping as an extra body.
Yeah.
Basically just somebody to compete with JJ Taylor.
They need was it Tyler Gaffney that backed the 1 year? Is that the right name?
No, because Tyler Gaffney was just always around, but he was always hurt. Who are you thinking of?
Who was one of the preseason legends that they just ran into the ground?
Ralph Webb's the guy I always go to.
Yeah.
I look at a guy like Darius Victor, Wes Hills. I'm just reading off the leading rushers in the USFL, I'll be honest. No, I do. Darius Victor's a good player. Actually, Reggie Corbin of the Michigan Panthers is a guy I've actually, for some reason, the Panthers are always on when I'm watching the USFL. That kid runs hard. So maybe Reggie Corbin. I don't know, but like somebody like that who's just going to take carries. And that way, if you do need a running back, you don't have to bring somebody in off the street. You get a guy off the practice squad who already knows the offense.
But where they also might need help is wide receiver, which we haven't seen Juju Smith-Schuster at all because that knee injury that dates back to last year with Kansas City. We got one look at Tyquan Thornton, and then he's been out with a soft tissue injury. So that receiver room, I think you mentioned it the other day, when they're healthy, it's a deep room, but it can quickly turn, quickly turn bad. And that's where it looks like it is right now. So hopefully they have that full group with some time off here when they come out in training camp, but there's some question marks there still right now.
Yeah, you nailed it. Their wide receiver group as it exists is fine. Like, I think it's enough. It's not great, but again, you have Parker at the X, Juju in the slot, Thornton and Bourne rotating in the Z, maybe Mike Gesicki. When one of those guys drops out, the whole thing starts to fall apart. And we saw it this week. They didn't have Juju. They didn't have Tyquan for most practice. And by the way, Tyquan's not a guy you can count on to stay healthy. And Devontae Parker's not a guy you can count on to stay healthy. Juju's generally been very durable over the course of his career, but he's clearly dealing with the knee injury. So those are all questions. Who is that fifth wide receiver? Even though I think Demario Douglas makes the team, he's more of a gadget player. I don't know that that's, his role. Is it Ty Montgomery, but now you're pulling away from the running backs? Is it a guy like Trey Nixon stepping up? Is it Ed Lee continuing to play well? And we're really taking a step back here, but this is kind of where they're at. Last year, the role I'm describing, at least early in the season, went to LJ Humphrey. He wasn't even with the team in the spring. He was not signed by the Patriots at this time last year. He was a free agent. So, and this is Hopkins or not, because I don't think, even if they signed Hopkins, they're not keeping Parker. So even if they add Hopkins, that fifth wide receiver spot is still a spot they need to fill. I don't know. Again, it's not somewhere you're going to go out and make a splash, but that's going to be something to watch going into camp because the depth does fall off really quickly. Now, again, that's where maybe a guy like Mike Gesicki and a guy like Ty Montgomery help you out and can kind of bridge that gap. And maybe that's ultimately their plan. But it's going to be really interesting to see how that all works out.
And Kayshon Boutte, a guy who maybe coming in, you could have considered that fifth, sixth wide receiver. He's been, I think we saw him once early in OTAs.
Once or twice, yeah. I think he was full one day, limited one day, and has been out since.
He wasn't there for minicamp at all, and he dealt with some injuries last year at LSU in the combine. And so that looks like one of those Foxborough flu candidates, so probably not counting on him this year in that equation.
Yeah. Yeah, he seems like a potential redshirt guy.
Yeah. And then, so the fallout of that was the limited wide receivers, a lot of 12 personnel. We mentioned Gesicki, big wide receiver, as Bill has called him before. How will that factor in? But when they're out on the field with what we've seen, it's been a lot of Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry on the field together. We know Bill O'Brien likes his two tight ends, so that's where that looks like it's headed. And Mike Gesicki's been impressive. This is, a setting that he should impress, a natural pass catcher, but his athleticism has kind of surprised me. But those two, that looks like it's going to be a key part of this offense this year.
I'll give you my hot take on the tight ends. I got some pushback for this today on my roster projection. I think they only keep 2. And, if
I
they're going to be
agree.
12 personnel heavy and Mike Gesicki's going to play wide receiver, you think they need another one. They're just going to be elevating guys from the practice squad. You're right. Gesicki and Henry are both going to be heavily involved. I think those are the only 2 they need for now. So they need those guys to stay healthy. And you're right. Gesicki, really his athleticism stands out much more in person than it did watching him. But I think that's it. I think that's the group.
And I agree with the two, because when they had Jonnu and Henry, everyone was like, "Oh, they're going to be running these two tight ends," and they only kept 2 most of the time, and then they would just elevate these guys off the practice squad. And I believe where you're at right now, you could get Matt Sokol, get Scotty Washington, probably get Anthony Ferkser on the practice squad, and then if you need one of those guys, you can just elevate them when needed.
Right. Yeah, I think that's and Johnny Lumpkin too. Don't forget Johnny Lumpkin. I
Yep,
think
Johnny
that's what it's
Wilson,
gonna. Yeah, I think that's
definitely.
what it's gonna look like.
And we'll see if the receivers are fully healthy, that personnel grouping, maybe they don't rely so much on 12 personnel. That will kind of be interesting. Again, one of those things to monitor, because we never saw all, Juju out there at all this spring.
And again, it goes back to that question of what is Mike Gesicki? Maybe that is 11 when Mike Gesicki's out there with Hunter Henry. Maybe it is 11. Like, we don't know, right? I doubt we'll ever get an answer to it. We might ask Bill, hey, when Gesicki and Henry out there together, you're an 11? We just put the best players out on the field. We're the best football team, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how that whole thing develops. And you're right, Juju Smith-Schuster will change a lot of that.
We need like a code word for Gesicki in that personnel or something like that.
I think I had one when they first signed him. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was Ghost 11.
Ghost 11.
It was something like that. I got to go back and look. I got to go back and look at what it was. It was something like that.
All right.
To find it, actually.
We'll come up with something. But I'd say right now the biggest question mark on this offense is the offensive tackle position, which was kind of where we were at when we ended last season.
Oh, wait, sorry, I found it. Cloudy 12 was the personnel. Cloudy 12. So is it 11? Is it 12? Although now that I'm seeing it, I got a better one. It's 11 and a half personnel. It's not quite 11. It's not quite 12. And Mike Gesicki's out there. It's 11 and a half personnel.
We'll roll with 11.
Much better than Cloudy 12. That was stupid.
I kind of like Cloudy 12, but we'll go 11.
Right, Cloudy 12, 11 and a half, whatever. Those are the 2. That's what we'll call it.
All right.
And so then when it's Ty Montgomery,
it's Cloudy 10 and a half.
Well, no, that would be Cloudy 21, right?
Yeah.
If it's Ty Montgomery with a back and he's flexed out. So like they're in the huddle. We don't know yet, right? And it's like Juju, Parker, Henry, Montgomery, Ramondre, which is, I believe, a grouping they used this week. That would be, Cloudy 21.
Cloudy 21. All right.
Or I don't know what's halfway between 11 and 21. Don't make me do math on the air.
16 and a half.
16. So that'd be 16 personnel. When I did, what was it? We went totally off the rails on some show. This was a while back. And do you remember AJ Derby?
Yeah.
Yeah, he played for the Patriots for like a minute. He was a college quarterback in Arkansas, and he moved to tight end. So my idea was, in the red zone, you throw 5. This was, I forget what year this was, but we thought the Patriots were going to keep like a bunch of tight ends on the roster. And the idea was you put all the tight ends out there, and then you put AJ Derby and Wildcat, and you're in 06 personnel.
Oops.
Yeah, it's on my Twitter somewhere. I had a back and forth with, I think it was Brian Phillips from Pat's Pulpit, about 06 personnel.
06.
But all right, so we have, what is it? We have cloudy 12, we have 11.5,
16.
16, cloudy 21. You put them both on the field together, that's cloudy 22. Right? Because you could go Parker. And like, I know we're laughing about this. I know we're having fun about this. This is what they are going to do. This is going to be part of the secret of their offenses here, is going to be the, what's the word? Not vagueness, but not uncertainty.
Unexpected, maybe? Like,
No, just the not randomness. I can't think of the word, but you're not really going to know what personnel grouping they're in, even when they're in the huddle. It's going to be very hard to tell, and even play to play. So they could come out with a certain alignment, with a certain grouping, be in one alignment, and then on the next play you try to sub to match that alignment, and they come out and everybody else is shifted. So for example, they're in 12 with Gesicki, but and they come out one snap and Gesicki split out wide opposite Parker. So they're in 12. And you have the back, you have Gesicki out wide, Juju in the slot, and then Parker out wide on the other side. So then you're like, all right, they're using Gesicki as a receiver. You sub out a linebacker, you put a big corner in to handle him, and then they come back out, and suddenly both Henry and Gesicki are playing off the tackle's hip. You didn't change the personnel grouping, but those are two very different formations to defend. So to get back to the point now, to take it to this next level, they could go out there with Parker, Ramondre, Henry, Gesicki, in Montgomery. What is that? Because you could have so Parker's going to be out wide. You know that, and Ramondre is going to be in the backfield. You could have Henry in line with Gesicki in one slot, Montgomery in the other. You could go shotgun two backs. You could essentially use, in this one they won't do, but you could use Ramondre as a fullback and go under center with the two tight ends in and bunch that thing up. There's so many different ways you can do it. I think clarity is the word I was looking for before for the defense. There's not going to be a lot of clarity as to what personnel they're in, even when you see what players are on the field. That's something I expect them to use heavily to their advantage.
And it's kind of, we'll get into the secondary, but it's kind of like that, just
Yeah, it's very similar.
All these different looks.
It's positionless football. This is what they're doing. There is certainly an element, and by the way, this trickles further down. Like, I'm not just saying this because of two players. Not that Scotty Washington is going to play a lot this year at all, but Bill Belichick talked about Scotty Washington as being a guy who's multi-positional. They're accumulating those guys because if this is what you're going to need, if this is what you're going to do, you need the depth to be able to do that. Anthony Ferkser's another guy who has some positional versatility on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe they bring back Lynn Bowden, and that's another guy that would fit that. I was talking before about, hey, they could use this other running back. Maybe that's where Lynn Bowden comes in. This is, I think, going to be a big part of their identity, is as long as they're healthy, mixing and matching personnel and making subtle changes from play to play and game to game so the defense can't really settle on one way to defend them. Now, the real way to maximize that would be take all of that confusion and then add a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who you have to give more attention to than simple one-on-one coverage. If you do that, now you're really cooking with gas. This thing they're doing right now is awesome. It's fun. You add Hopkins to this equation, dare I say they might be great. Dare I say that. But it does feel like this is kind of the mold of what they're trying to do.
And I
just rambled on. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but
I think you pretty much hit it all. There's just so much they can do there, and hopefully we do get, maybe one of the Bills will give us a little look about what they call that instead of our cloudy 21s or whatever. But while there's a lot of optimism there, one of the big question marks right now on this offense is the offensive tackle position. Trent Brown was back Tuesday in a very limited fashion. He wasn't in any of the team drills. So it was Calvin Anderson on the left. It was McDermott on the right. Riley Reif worked in behind him from time to time. But that right tackle position seems like that's going to be the job up for grabs in training camp. I'd imagine Brown right now is still their left tackle. That's probably where they're best, but that seems like a dicey positional group right now.
Yeah, I don't love where they're at there because some people have said, like, is Trent Brown a sure thing to make the roster? And he's their only definitive starting caliber tackle. So if you can't even count on him, I said before, if the offense is undone by something, I don't think it's going to be the quarterbacks. I don't think it's going to be the wide receivers, Hopkins or not. It's going to be the tackles because you have Calvin Anderson and Connor McDermott, who have been spot starters at best in their NFL careers, and Riley Reef, who was a good starter, but is entering his age 35 season, and really hasn't looked like the same guy he was at his peak. So they are certainly missing something at that tackle position. It feels like they're just kind of throwing things against the wall. And the idea is, from their point of view, I think is we know Trent Brown can handle one spot. If we can get one season's worth of starting caliber tackle play from the combination of Calvin Anderson, Riley Reef, Connor McDermott, that handles both. But now you're counting on Trent Brown to play 17 games. You're counting on getting quality snaps from guys you probably shouldn't be. It makes me a little uneasy. Honestly, I'm kind of at the point, and I think I said this on the show before, where I'm on board with them signing DJ Fluker. Not because I think DJ Fluker is going to be the answer. I don't feel great about saying I'm on board with them signing DJ Fluker. But if you're going to just throw things against the wall to see what sticks, throw as many things against the wall as you can. You're going to take all these 50-50 shots at it. The more shots you have, the better chance you have at hitting on one. And Fluker can play some guard too, so that frees up the possibility if you want to kick Michael Onwenu out to right tackle, which I don't think they'll do, but they should consider. Yeah, I'm worried about where they're at with this tackle group. I really am.
That'll be interesting when Onwenu comes back because they thrusted Mafi and Jake Andrews in that right guard spot a lot, and Mafi had that red non-contact jersey, so we'll see where he's at in training camp. But maybe it is just if that right tackle group really falls out, maybe it is you just have to play your best five, and that's Michael Onwenu kicked out to right tackle, especially if they don't think they're going to pay him next year. Then it's go play right tackle for us, and we don't have to worry about paying you like a right tackle next offseason.
So this is an interesting question I've thought about last couple days, and it comes from Mike Cadlick. How's it going, Mike? He probably turned it off in the time. This is what I used to do when I left CLNS and Evan would do streams. I'd put in things to try to make him laugh, and then I'd just leave. I'd turn it off. I didn't even bother to see what happened. But Mike asked, should they have signed Orlando Brown Jr.? I'll hang up and listen. I'm going to phrase this question a little differently. Not should they have signed Orlando Brown Jr., but there were all those tackles we were talking about this offseason, right? Orlando Brown Jr., Mike McGlinchey, Juwan Taylor. They all got pretty good money. I think Caleb McGarry came in, a little under. But the idea being, Patriots, we thought really needed one of those tackles, and they ended up not signing one. Had the Patriots signed one of those tackles, we're not having this conversation about being worried about the tackle position. But we're also probably not talking about DeAndre Hopkins because they don't have the money to outbid everybody else because that money goes to that tackle. So my question is to you, Brian, would you rather have the chance of signing DeAndre Hopkins? Let's even say this. Let's say they get him. Would you rather have DeAndre Hopkins, or would you rather they have signed one of those top-tier free agent tackles back in the spring?
I wasn't in love with a lot of the free agent tackles, I feel. Orlando Brown, I feel. How old is he now? Is he 30?
29, I think. It doesn't have to be Orlando Brown. It can be
but
in either side, because Trent Brown can play both sides, right? So
Mike McGlinchey's contract was huge, I thought. He was a guy who was initially on my free agent radar, but he got a bag. Juwan Taylor, they paid like a left tackle, which,
by the way, Orlando Brown just turned 27.
Is he really? He's only 27?
Yeah, he was drafted young. Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel that's tough. I don't know. I like Hopkins because that receiver room, I feel like they could, if you can get a locked-in Trent Brown, which I hope Adrian Clem, can do that.
The guy who was already late to practice and then
but you said
finish the second one.
You said the other day Clem was a Scarnecchia. He was here with Scarnecchia, so maybe he has a little bit of that and can get Brown
Maybe, but I'm just saying
locked in.
it's
I
if
know
that's your argument, it's not a great start.
it's risky, but I don't know. I'd be pretty back and forth. It depends which tackle they landed because they did get some contracts that could look bad in a few years, but yeah, that's tough. Where are you at with it?
I've said in the past, and this is actually a much better way to phrase this point. You've heard me make this point. If there was a tackle equivalent of DeAndre Hopkins available right now, I would be saying sign that guy over Hopkins. As much as I like Hopkins, and I do, and people know I very much want them to sign him, I'd rather feel good about the tackle position because if they had Orlando Brown or Mike McGlinchey, who was my guy, or Jawan Taylor, even Caleb McGarry, and you might have been able to do McGarry and Hopkins. We'll see what money Hopkins ends up getting. But if they had one of those guys, I would feel pretty good about the offense as a whole right now. I'm not going to lie. The biggest issue would be who's their fifth receiver. And that's not a nothing issue. They don't have a lot of depth at receiver. We established that. But my biggest issue would be who's their fifth receiver. That's a much better issue to deal with
starting offensive tackle
for both of your starting offensive tackles. So I would have, I don't know that it's Orlando Brown. Again, I liked McGlinchey. I like the road grading right tackle because one, I think McGlinchey's a better player. And two, I like keeping Trent Brown on the left side. And McGlinchey allows you to do that. Orlando Brown, I think he was signing to be a left tackle. I don't think you were going to have him and Trent. One of the, like, Orlando Brown was going to play on the left side if you signed him. So I would go with McGlinchey, but I would rather have the tackle than DeAndre Hopkins. I'd rather have Orlando Brown than DeAndre Hopkins too, even though it's not my ideal layout, but I would rather have the tackle than DeAndre Hopkins. So look at Mike still contributing to the show. Thanks for that. That was actually a really good conversation. And before we move, if Mike wants to come in and do this part, he can do it. But this is my job now. I do want to remind everybody that this show is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. If your first bet doesn't win, just go to FanDuel.com/Boston to join today. Baseball's a fun one to bet on because there's games every single day, right? You can really follow those trends. Not a lot of time for teams to heat up. There's not a lot of times for teams to cool down. And you can really start to play not just the spread, but the odds on it. I think more so than any other sport, baseball's odds lend itself to having some fun there. So don't miss your chance to snag a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball trademarks used with permission. 21 plus and present in Massachusetts. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Hope is here. Gambling helpline ma.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234.
US Open too. Go lay a little.
Oh yeah, the US Open's on.
Me and Mike went back to Brooks. We did a little Max Homa too, who I just looked was 1 under through 4, so a little good start there.
The problem is I root for the course. You can't bet on the course. I guess he could because you can probably.
You could bet like winning score, like under.
So yeah, I did look at the odds, but yeah, they must have that, right? You know, just bet the winner to be the highest possible. I do that. I root for the course in the U.S. Open. Go course.
Course guy. Yeah. This is supposed to be a tough one, isn't it?
Did you see the video of them dropping the golf ball into the rough? Yeah. No, the U.S. Open is always a very tough course. Yep. Let's see. Can I find this? U.S. Open live specials, tournament specials? Is this it? Nobody needs to listen to me do that. I'm going to try to find it, but we can. Here. Round leader. Oh, no. That's the person. Hole scores. Round score, is that it?
Little golf.
You can bet by. All right, yeah, it's there somewhere. They have so many options. Like it could take me the rest of the show to comb through them.
Oh yeah. All right, but we can jump over to the defensive side of the ball. We'll start down in the trenches, which again, no pads, tough to really get a good look at that, but they're pretty disruptive on Tuesday. But I think the big thing, the big storyline from minicamp was Lawrence Guy, right? He was the one holdout. He's 33. He's missed games 2 of the last 3 years, but he was a team captain. He's their community service guy, obviously respected in that locker room. But I know you said you did a roster projection. Did you have Lawrence Guy on that, or where'd you go
I
with that?
did not. I don't really see where he's going with this.
Yeah.
The Patriots, he's 33. He had a down year. They have other guys that can do what he does, especially after drafting Keon White. I get he's an important leader, voice in the locker room, all of that, but they don't need to overextend themselves to keep him. And this is just me just guessing. Like, there's no inside information here. I wonder if he's thinking about retiring. And this is kind of, well, I'm going to walk away anyway, but I'm not totally sure. I might as well see if I can get some more money at least, right? Because that's what his leverage would be, well, all right, if you want me to come back, you've got to entice me to come back, because otherwise I'm fine just walking away from the game. So I had him off because Patriots save, I think it's like 3.3 million if they cut him with 500,000 dead cap. That's a no-brainer if the guy's not going to show up. So I really like Lawrence Guy as a player. He was a good player for them for a while. Again, an important locker room voice, does a ton of the community. The guy in his prime can play for my team any day. Those are the kind of guys you want on your team. But at this point in his career, if he's asking for more money, I just don't see it. I don't see it.
And I think he was right around like 54, 55% of the defensive snaps last year. And like you said, he's a good player in his role. He can take on double teams in the run game. He's good there, but they have guys who can do that, especially with Keon White, who was pretty impressive. I know he missed Tuesday, which looked like an injury. He got checked out on Monday. Probably nothing too serious, but we'll see there. But yeah, just kind of a weird position and a surprise that the one holdout was Lawrence Guy there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely surprising would be the word I would use.
But I'd say, speaking of Keon White, the main story of the defense one of the main stories was Marte Mapu, who we knew he was versatile when they drafted him, but he really showcased that second and third level of the defense. And as we've said before, this is a guy who they haven't had this skill set on their defense before. He can play both those levels. He can cover sideline to sideline, and they threw him right in there. So it looks like he's going to have a big role, which is exciting with a guy like that skill set finally on this defense.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy you've really been waiting to see in this defense, that role. And we've talked a lot about this. Would they try to have him change to fit what they traditionally want at linebacker, or would they create a new role within their defense for him? And they've done the latter, and it's super exciting because this kind of athletic, instinctive middle linebacker is the guy they've needed. I mean, there's really nothing more you can say at this point. Until the pads come on, he's checked every box you could want him to check so far, and they've checked every box with him you could want so far. Now it's just, what does he look like when he's getting knocked around at 216 pounds? Can he hold his own physically? And that's the kind of thing you just don't know until you know.
His instincts, too, have been impressive. Playing both of those spots at this point of the year and being able to handle those. There's been times he's lining up his teammates. We mentioned on the offensive side of the ball, all this motion they're running. He's been able to, decipher a lot of that, not get fooled. So he's just checked every box, like you said. He's been really impressive so far, and still in that red non-contact jersey. We'll see what happens when the pads come on, but he's probably going to be the main player to watch during those training camp practices.
Yeah. I think I said it the other day. I believe CLNS put the clip out. I don't know that I'm going to watch anybody else that first pattern practice. It really might just be him.
Mm-hmm. And staying with the rookies, secondary, Christian Gonzalez, plug-and-play starter, as we expected. We'll see the coverage skills as the intensity kind of picks up, but as advertised, everything in terms of athleticism, fluidity, everything in those, which we kind of expected watching him at Oregon.
Yeah. All right, you cut out there. Say that again.
Everything, just athleticism, everything we saw at college, it translated in shorts on the practice field.
No, I missed who you were talking about.
Oh, Christian Gonzalez.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I was like, that could be. I didn't know if we were still doing Marte Mapu. I was like, yeah, I thought we covered that. Yeah, he's very athletic. Yeah, Gonzalez is again, the phrase I keep going back to with him is as advertised.
Mhm.
The movement skills are, elite, upper tier, top of the chart, whatever you want to call it. Now it's just about getting him fit in the system. They're going to do some really, really complex things defensively this year. We're already seeing it. Normally, this time of year, you hear the term install a lot. What that is you're square one. There's the way NFL rosters are now with turnover and all of that. There's so many new guys. You really have to start from the ground up with your playbook every year. The Patriots in a rare spot where outside of Devin McCourty, everybody from last year is back, and they didn't add a ton on defense. It's really Gonzalez and Mapu, who are both highly intelligent football players. So where most teams are at square one, and even like the Patriots offense is at square one, new offensive coordinator, new offense, they're absolutely at square one. And some of the players talked about this, and I think Bill even mentioned something about it this week that the defense is ahead of the offense right now because the defense, they're picking up where they left off at the end of last year. And players said that we're picking up where we left off. The defense is on step 4 or 5 at this point. They're installing some things that you normally don't see teams start to install until you get into October. And you add to that the versatility that they have in their personnel, and then you have Bill Belichick's brain running the whole thing. There's a ton of opportunities for them to get creative defensively. To bring that back to Gonzalez, that's the biggest question for him. Can he keep up with his assignments? Now, it probably is a bigger question for Mapu, honestly, because I do think that there is going to be a heavy element of that old Patriots defensive philosophy of, all right, top boundary corner. So Steph Gilmore, Darrelle Revis, Aqib Talib, Ty Law, whoever, right? JC Jackson. You're going to go over here. You're going to just take that guy out of the game, do what you need to do, and we're going to play the rest of the game over here 10 on 10. In that sense, he'll probably be fine. I do think that he is going to be asked to do some other things, though. They are going to be rotating and spinning the dial and hiding coverages and moving around before the snap and things like that. So we'll see how quick he picks up on that. But that kind of goes to my bigger point, Brian, of what this defense can be. You look at all the different things they can do, and it's kind of like we talked about before with the offense. You're going to have Christian Gonzalez at one boundary corner, but after that, you can have Jack Jones in the boundary or on the slot. You can have Jonathan Jones in the boundary on the slot at deep safety. You can have Kyle Duggar at deep safety, at box safety, at slot corner. You can have Adrian Phillips, box safety, deep safety. Jabril Peppers can basically be anywhere. Jalen Mills can basically be anywhere. So you're going to have to come out as a quarterback, and these are all guys. These are not passive players. These are not guys that are just kind of, yeah, he's good, so I'm not going to throw near him. No, these are guys that can impact the play when it's initially made away from them. We heard, I'm trying to think of a better comp for this, because none of them obviously are Ed Reed, but you would hear Brady say yeah, I need to know before every snap where Ed Reed is. I don't think any of these guys are Ed Reed, but they're that sort of player. Some of these guys have the potential to be that sort of player, especially at the safety level, a guy like Kyle Duggar, where I need to know where Kyle Duggar is before the snap every time. Well, he's going to be in a different spot before every snap, and they're going to be able to mix and match all that. And everything I just said about all of those combinations they can mix and match, that's all just before the snap. You then have to, you do all that again once the ball is snapped, because maybe Jonathan Jones is starting out as the boundary corner, right? And Jalen Mills is the free safety, and then the ball is snapped, and suddenly it's Jonathan Jones rotating back to the deep part of the field, and Jalen Mills moves over to cover the receiver. Or, Kyle Duggar starts off in the box showing blitz, and then he's hightailing it back to handle the deep safety responsibility. And maybe a guy like Adrian Phillips or Jabril Peppers, who started deep, suddenly flies up to fill in the box. They are going to be flying around. They are going to be making quarterbacks' heads spin. All right, we came up with cloudy 12 personnel, right, on offense. I was talking to George Bilecki from Nesson during practice on Tuesday, and we were talking about this on defense, how just everybody is lining up everywhere, and then it changes after the snap, and all these guys are doing all these different things. He called it, so I got to give him credit for this one, the UFO defense, because you saw something. You don't
Just
know
don't
what
know
it
what it
was.
was.
You can't even say what shape it was, what it was doing. You just know you saw something, but it wasn't anything you've ever seen before, and you can't really describe it. That's what this defense, really this secondary, has the potential to be, is something different on every single snap. And that's incredibly exciting.
And it's just like the personnel on the offense. It can
Yeah.
be the same 5 or 6 defensive backs, but they could be playing entirely different roles every single
Yeah.
snap. So,
But what I would say the difference from the offense is, I think on offense, you're using the versatility to mask some of the deficiencies in overall talent. I think on defense, the overall talent allows you this flexibility and is enhanced by the versatility. Like, they don't need to do this to be good defensively. They are doing it because they can. I think they kind of need to do it on offense. They can do it on defense.
mm, and you mentioned that, like, they're able to do this because they brought all the players back. They also brought all the coaches
Yes,
back,
that's
right?
a
Like
big point too.
Gerard Mayo back, and even bringing Bill O'Brien in, it's gonna let Bill Belichick able go back to handle more of the, schematic, complex defensive things. So just another thing, familiarity, really talent level on the coaching staff that's gonna able to maybe raise their ceiling in a way, or just make them even better there on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
So, anything else defensively? I think that was pretty much all the positions.
I saw a couple of people asking about Jalen Mills just real quick. He's going to be a safety. And look, that's not to say he won't have some cornerback responsibilities. He will. All of their safeties do, but he's a safety at this point. The one thing that I think you'll see him, and you might see. Did we talk about it on this show, or was it on a different show that I did? I don't remember, about last year when they would use like Kyle Duggar to jam receivers.
Oh, we talked about that
That's
yesterday,
okay.
or
That was, yeah.
Tuesday or
Again, they all
whatever it
run
was, yeah.
together at this time of year.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's where you're going to see Jalen Mills playing like more like a traditional corner. They're going to use his size against bigger receivers
And tight
and
ends.
tight ends.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
he was covering Gesicki, and yeah, mostly like when Gesicki's in the slot, he was taking that responsibility a lot,
Well, so this is
which
the irony of it. We talked at length about Gesicki kind of being this matchup nightmare because he's a hybrid. You don't really, is he a corner? Is he a safety? Or is he a wide receiver? Is he a tight end? What are you doing with him? They kind of have the perfect counter to that in Jalen Mills. Is he a corner? Is he a safety? What exactly? Like, he's not quite fast enough to be a corner, but he's not built like a safety. He's not quite big enough to be a safety, but he can cover these tweener wide receiver tight ends who the Patriots have. So it's kind of funny. The Patriots defense is kind of built to stop the Patriots offense, like almost perfectly.
yeah.
So generally what we do bye week, and we're way ahead of ourselves here with the bye week. The bye week show I like to do in terms of the self-scouting, because we do the game previews every week and how are you going to match up and what are the receiver matchups and who are the key players. I like to do it as if the Patriots are playing the Patriots. We're going to have a fun show bye week, kind of seeing what that would look like.
Definitely. And I mean, that's just only good for really both sides going at each other in practice. It should be, I mean, Mac even mentioned it the other day, like the stuff Steve Belichick is drawing up and throwing at them. It's only good stuff from that point of view.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap it up with special teams. We have obviously kicker and punter competitions. Before we jump into those quick, I mean, Joe Judge, if you put someone who like doesn't know the Patriots in practice watching, I think they'd walk away by saying Joe Judge is the special teams coordinator. So it'll be interesting when those coaching titles come out, like right before the first day of training camp. Is he the coordinator? Because that would technically signal a demotion for Cam Acord, who's still involved with Joe Houston, but that's Joe Judge's role. So I'm interested to see if they give him that coordinator title.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Now that league document, when they lost the practices, referred to him as special teams coach. That's not really a role. You have special teams coordinator, assistant special teams coordinator, and assistant special teams coaches. I don't remember the last time I saw coach labeled special teams coach. So maybe he's the coach. They created this new position of special teams coach to put him ahead of Cam McCord without demoting Cam McCord. Like, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. When we got the rosters that were handed out on Monday, they had coaches on the bottom. And I don't know if you heard me. I got all excited. I was like, oh, here we go. We got the coaching. Oh, you have it right there. And then I noticed it still had Matt Patricia on it, but it also had Bill O'Brien. So it was kind of a mismatch of this year and last year. Is Joe? Oh, no, Joe Judge is on there. He's listed as the quarterback's coach still, right?
Offensive assistant quarterbacks.
Yeah. What is Bill O'Brien listed as on there?
Offensive coordinator, quarterbacks.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of some weird mismatch of last year and this year. That's not something we can go by yet. But it is going to be interesting to see what Joe Judge's title ends up being.
And then, so those competitions on special teams, we'll start punter, Bryce Behringer, Corliss Waitman. Behringer missed a few practices, looked like maybe an eye injury. We weren't 100% sure, but kind of looks like Corliss Waitman took the early lead there in the spring.
Yeah, I have it as Waitman right now, and I know Behringer was dealing with an injury, but Waitman looks good. Waitman looks good. He looks a lot better than he did last year. We'll see what happens in the games, because this is something we can kind of evaluate non-padded practices. We'll see what happens when we get into the games, but Waitman's been impressive so far. It's not to say Behringer's been bad, but it's been limited. We really haven't seen a lot of them. That's going to be a real competition. That one's 50-50. Still a lot of time for things to change, but yeah, so far heading out of the spring, I think Waitman has the edge heading into camp.
And I'd say we got a better look at the punter competition over the kicker competition. They weren't too busy. Falk did show up for minicamp. Him and Ryland were both there. So I'd still probably give Ryland the upper hand just because he is that 4th round pick, and that's tougher to cut bait with than Behringer, who was a 6th round pick.
Yeah, it definitely changes things. And with Falk being 38 years old, struggling down the stretch last year, you'd rather move on a year too early than a year too late. The other thing that I think factors in, and some of this is speculation, but when they were doing kickoff drills, it was pretty much just the kickers handling kickoffs. We didn't see Waitman or Behringer doing it a lot. It was Falk and Ryland. And that's not to say Falk can't kick off, but when he had his dip last year, it coincided with Jake Bailey getting hurt and when he took over on kickoffs, being Falk. And a lot of people pointed to that and, wondered, and I think it's a fair question. Never got a straight answer to it, but was there correlation there? Because that kick, I mean, you only have so many kicks in your leg over the course of a day, right? It's fatigue. It's like anything else. If the kickers are going to be handling kickoffs this year, that is something to consider. Because if Folk can't do both, and Bill was asked about carrying 3 kickers, maybe they keep Nick Folk on the practice squad for the first couple of weeks and elevate him, and Ryland's doing the kickoffs and he's doing the field goals. But that's not a long-term solution. But if the kickers are going to handle kickoffs, I think that gives a strong, strong edge to Chad Ryland. Although I think it should be the punter, because both their punters have done kickoffs and
they have big legs.
Yeah, why not? So maybe they know the punters are going to do it and they're happy with both of them. So they were having the kickers do it just to get a look and get some reps in. This is, again, a thing where we have to get to like games. But yeah, if the kickers are going to handle kickoffs, I think that's a definitive, very definitive check in the Chad Ryland column.
And Bill didn't shoot down the idea of carrying 2 kickers. He said they did it before. Yeah, they did it last year with Vizcaino. And
there was one game they had more kickers active than running backs last year. Actually, I think it was more than one game.
The Bills game, I know the home Bills game, they had like 3 kickers.
They had 3 kickers active and 2 running backs. And I think it happened 1 or 2 other times. So, yeah, it's.
Did they have someone else in here besides Vizcaino in the season, or was he the only?
No, it was Vizcaino, and they kept calling him up because
Jake needed someone to do kickoffs.
Right, because they replaced Jake Bailey with the punter who couldn't do kickoffs. But Vizcaino also had no kickoff experience. Yeah. Like they had 3 kickers on the roster. None of the 3 had kickoff experience. So I will still never understand that they couldn't just add a kickoff specialist that like actually kicked off. But yeah, no, I wouldn't rule out them doing something weird with the kickers in the practice squad and IR and all that when the time comes. But if I had to give you one of each right now, it's Chad Ryland, Corliss Waitman. Those are the guys. And if there
Mhm.
was a battle at long snapper, which there never was, Tucker Addington had a couple rough snaps throughout the spring. So Joe Cardona was 100% secure with the contract he got. He's 110% secure now.
Mhm. And the only other special teams thing I had, which we've noted a lot before, was Jordan Heelig, taking that role next to Matthew
Yeah.
Slater, pretty much exclusively only working with special teams, something we've seen before from guys like DeMarcus Mitchell, Brendan Schooler last year, guys who make the roster. So just we'll kind of see where that unfolds, because it's going to be tough to cut down to 53. I don't know if you had him on your roster projection,
Heelig?
but
Yeah, I
yeah,
did.
yep. So there might be room for him, and as they remodel that kind of special teams unit. So
I think
something
he's going to
noteworthy.
play a similar position to the one Cody Davis plays. And Cody
Yeah.
Davis was limited throughout the spring, and he's dealing with that knee injury. So I had Cody Davis
He
off.
looks like,
What are you going to say?
yeah, he looks like Cody Davis looks maybe like a PUP guy to start
Yeah.
camp, I'd say.
So I had Cody Davis off.
Yeah.
And for Jordan Heelig, if Cody Davis isn't healthy, they like extending that UDFA streak. Clearly, they like Jordan Heelig if he's working with Matthew Slater. That kind of feels like a no-brainer.
I agree. And what's Davis now? 30, low mid 30s. So
He's
coming off that
on the
AC.
wrong side of 30. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
it might be like 31 or 32. I don't think it's by much, but Cody Davis
And
is he's 34.
Yeah, and coming off that knee injury, it
Yeah.
might get a UDFA like Jordan Heelig in there.
Right.
So that pretty much hits all the positions. Anything else, wrapping the spring up, looking forward to the summer.
I think that's pretty much it. Now we just wait on Hopkins. That's going to kind of be the big storyline that carries us through. And based on what Ian Rappaport said, it might carry us between now and camp or into camp. But this is it. This is it. Now we enter the silly season. Now we kind of got to stretch to fill these shows and whatnot.
Yeah. So Hopkins looked like he flew in yesterday.
Yeah.
I channeled my inner college football fan, pulled up the old Flight Radar app, and there was a private jet that left from Houston, landed in Logan at
Are we
like
sure
10:45.
Hopkins still lives in Houston?
He posted a Instagram story in Houston the day before, I believe.
Right.
So
That's fair.
that's where it looked like. So I don't know if that was him, but I think it was Jeremy Fowler said he was in Foxborough as we expected. So
What does it mean that he posted an Instagram story in Nashville but not here? We reading into that at all?
Did they steal his phone and lock it away or something? But yeah, Rappaport said like this could drag on.
He did actually put something. It's a picture of him holding some
like a chocolate milk or something.
Yeah, a Muslin on the road. So he is on the road. So
Yeah.
where's that?
But Rappaport did say this could drag on, and maybe that is agent talk for just give me the money I want, right? But if how long would you wait till training camp to sign him, or is this like if you're not going to sign with us right now, we're done with this?
I mean, I'm not going to shut the door. I'm not going to burn the bridge.
Yeah.
I would heavily encourage. I think I'm pretty set on this. It's in the Patriots' best interest that he signs right now. I'm not necessarily saying that means that they can't sign him later, but I don't think if you're the Patriots, you should feel comfortable saying, yeah, go ahead, think about it. We'll be here. You shouldn't be. Get him to sign before he leaves the building.
So he was back today for day 2 of the meetings, it sounded like. So maybe later today, tomorrow, we'll get some news. Probably when Alex is on the tee box on Saturday.
Well, I'm playing tomorrow now too. So
we got
get ready.
I think I'm playing after this too. So we just got someone's going to be on the golf course.
Yes.
If DeAndre Hopkins signs.
I feel like I've been on the golf course for a lot of big Patriots wide receiver news. I was on the golf course. I remember when they cut Antonio Brown. I was on the golf course when Malcolm Mitchell retired. I was on the golf course. There was one other one. I don't know. I can't remember what it is, but there was definitely another one. I feel like I've been on the golf course when wide receiver news happened.
That's the trick.
So
just get on the golf.
Yeah.
Get on the golf course and wide receiver.
If I must go golf so the Patriots can get a good receiver, I'll take one for the team. Sounds like a win-win to me.
All right. So, any final thoughts before we cut it out here?
I think that's it.
All right. So,
I gotta
Patriots
run.
will
I
be
gotta go down to Gillette and do Catch 22. So get
Oh,
ready to
yeah.
hear me say all of the exact same things again, but with Evan in about an hour.
All right. So, Patriots are off for summer break till like the second to last week of July. Usually that's when they come back for training camp, but shows will be back at some point. So, Patriots Press Pass notifications, turn them on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Until then, you can follow Alex on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Go read all his work at 985thesportshub.com. You can follow me on Twitter at IamBrianHines. Go read all my work at patspulpit.com. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you guys soon.